So welcome to stage 2 of the OpenRC tractor by Makit Pro. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the last video. This one won't be so long, I promise you. So in this stage what we're going to do is we're going to take the motor, we're going to insert it into the motor housing, we're going to wire up the connector, we're going to get it ready to assemble all the wires for the next stage. Okay, so the parts that we need for this week is only the one part. And that's 203 2019 motor bracket, and you see it's a nice simple part. Now if you're like me, you might think, oh, that needs supports. It actually doesn't, but if you want to print supports, there's not really any harm in that. So I'll print that in my usual settings, and I don't think it's going to take too long. So there we go, what, just over an hour and a half. 25 pence worth of filament, 12 grams. So yeah, not too long. Now the colour I've chosen for this, I believe, is black, but because it won't be on show with the finished model, you can actually use any colour you want. So the parts that we need for this week, which hopefully we pre-ordered, we also need a DC motor, and we need a pack of JST connectors, and then we'll need some M3 8mm button head screws. So there's our motor, and for some reason I've got these in US dollar prices, please forgive me. There we go, and that's £5.90, quite expensive, but it is worth it. So as I said on a previous video, I've opted for the 176 RPM motor. We don't need the high speed because it is only a tractor, so we could probably get away with much lower speed. Perhaps that wouldn't drain it so much. And as you can see there, the motor is with metal gear, some noise in them, but with big torque, high strength and long working time. So you will be able to drive this tractor over rough terrain, for example. It should be able to handle it. The next piece that we need is some JST connectors, which again, hopefully we bought this in advance, and they're £2.90. This is obviously current prices at time of filming. So you'll see you get 20 pieces. These are the male connectors, and then you also get 10 female connectors. And you see you've got bare wires on the end, very easy to work with, so that you can connect them up to other things. You'll also be pleased to know that in 4 weeks time, which will be stage 5, there's actually no electronics required at all, but if you do want to get a few things in advance, there we go, we can start looking at the steering arms, the caps and the rear side arms. Possibly even go for the 5mm LEDs. All the links I have provided in the spreadsheet, which the link should be in the description. Okay, so here I have my parts for this week. I have the motor, and I have one female JST connector. You see, this is kind of a little box, and then obviously we'll have another end coming in this way. The reason we want the female connector is because when we come to doing the battery, it will have a male plug on it, so it will just save us having to do lots of different conversions. So we're going to connect the female wire on. We have our bracket, which you see I've printed off quite nicely, very happy with that. We're also going to need a couple of 8mm button head screws. We will also need some, if you've got some, this is only optional. We need some heat shrink tubing. What this will do is we'll go over the solder connection, and then when we heat it up, it will shrink and hold it really tight. I've got my soldering iron because we will be doing some solder, and I've got some solder wire. So the first thing I'm going to do is just cut a couple of pieces of this. So we want to cut it longer than we need. So we need it only about that long, so we can perhaps cut this much off. So I will cut this, and one for the negative. But if you've got red and black, obviously that's going to look a little bit better, but I don't have that size in red, so I'll keep it like that. So the first thing we're going to do, you see there's two holes in the motor. We've got a couple of holes there, and we're gonna actually screw the motor in. And this is simply so that, you know, holding this and it's going to roll all over the place. It's going to be difficult to solder. So this will give us a little bit more of a stable, bit more stability when we work on it. So we'll just pop one 8mm screw into there, and as usual I just screw the first one in just enough so it connects. And it's quite interesting, you'd think with these screws it wouldn't hold this motor in too well, what with the weight of it, but actually you'd be surprised, it really does hold it in really well. Quite a flimsy piece of plastic, but a really heavy motor, and yet with these two little screws it holds it in so well. Look at that, there's no movement there at all. Right, so I've noticed with these motors that they come with a red dot, but sometimes they have a red dot on the other side. What I've done, it doesn't matter which way round you connect the terminals. If you connect the terminals round the wrong way, it will just spin in the opposite direction. But when you come to setting your receiver up, you can reverse the signal. This is actually going to drive the motors, so this will be the trigger part of the receiver. So what you'll do is you'll go into the receiver and you'll reverse the signal, so it will actually drive it the opposite way. But if you want to test it, I've got a variable power supply, so I'm just going to connect this power supply, and we'll try this one on positive and this one on ground. And although you can't see that, it is spinning that way, so that's anti-clockwise. Now I believe a motor by default should go clockwise, so if we just switch these terminals round, it's now, you see it was rotating that, so it was actually rotating clockwise. So in actual fact, to get it to rotate clockwise, we actually need to put the black terminal on by the red dot. Yeah, so that's how I'm going to do this one. I have built another tractor and I've got it rotating clockwise, so I'm going to just do it so it matches up. So now there are many ways to solder. I want to give a big shout out to Love Minis, who's given me a lot of help on the basics. I am by no means a professional solderer, so if you're not happy with the way I solder, that's fine, do it your own way. But I've watched a lot of YouTube videos and I've tried this, and this is actually the way I prefer. So the first thing I'm going to do is this is actually liquid flux, and liquid flux kind of cleans things, so I'm just going to pop a little bit on the end there. I'll just clean any little bits off the end of the solder, and then I'm going to do what they call tinning, and I'm just going to put on lots and lots of solder onto the soldering iron. And this solder actually does have flux built into it, and then we just clean that, and that's probably about as clean as I can get it. So then what I'll do is, and this is, let's say this is the method I like, and what I've seen, we've seen a few people, what they do is they pop quite a bit of solder onto the terminals like so. There is actually a little bit too much on there, and I've done that on purpose. And then what I'll do is I'll bring the wires in, and then I'll just touch the solder and it will join those up again. So obviously we need to remember to put the heat shrink tubing on first, because we won't get it on afterwards, will we? So just slide those down out of the way. So and all I need to do now is just gently touch that, remelt that solder, let it dry. That's sorry, let it dry, let it go hard, let it cool down, I meant to say. There we go, and that's now connected, and it's as simple as that. If you're not confident with soldering, you know, that's fine, get someone else to do it, or find an alternative way to do it. Now there's two ways that you can shrink this. If you I know a lot of motor mechanics, and there's only one way they melt this, and that's to use a lighter, which that one doesn't work. And all they do is they just run a lighter underneath and just a couple of quick passes, and that's now secure. Obviously the proper and correct method is to use a heat gun of some description. So we'll turn that on, and little blast of the heat gun, and don't hold it really close for a long time, especially as we're dealing with a holder with plastic. Okay, and that is it, guys. That's all we've needed to do on this stage. Now we will be doing some more soldering next week, which will include making a JST extension cable. I'm actually going to do that next week, but if you know, we've got our JST connectors, we could do them this week, but I'm not going to. I'm going to save that for next week. So what I'd like to do, this is like a little optional extra, I'd like to get a battery, and I just want to plug it in very quickly. There we go. It's always good to test your electronics, because that may have slipped off while I soldered it. Perhaps it wasn't making a good connection. It's always a good idea to test your connections. If you haven't got anything to connect it with, obviously you can't test it. I've actually gone one stage further, and I have actually made my own testing wire, which I now can't show you because it's gone. There we go. So this is my testing wire, and we've got, these are actually parts that came with a battery charger. So we've got a wire that plugs into my variable power supply, and this has got a T-plug on the end. And then I bought another T-plug, and the T-plug has this connector on. And then this is a JST connector, but I've split the ends. So I've wired in two JST connectors, one male, one female. I've also wired in two tiny sorry guys, two tiny connectors. So you see all the positives together and all the negatives, and then all I need to do is I plug the T-plug in like so. I can then plug this into my variable power supply. I can then plug this in, and then I can connect any connector to it that I wish, but that's obviously an optional extra. Okay guys, thank you very much. Okay, so that's it for this week. Well, this episode. I'm rather happy with the results. That came out very clean. So obviously we've still got the parts from last week. So what we'll do is we'll make some more wires to go through there. We'll attach the motor like that, and then we'll attach the second part of the diff that we made last week. That will all connect, and then this motor will then drive these two, which are going to become the axles. So I'm looking forward to that. Now, as a bonus, I've just checked back the video. As I was finishing off the soldering, I noticed a rather high stench. It turns out that what I actually did, and I've gone and put it away safely now, I didn't put my lid on the liquid flux. So I've gone from almost a full bottle to almost an empty bottle. Thankfully I only bought 100 ml. I was going to buy a litre. So lesson, when you're finished with your flux, pop your lid on. But if you want a bit of fun, have a little watch back, see the point where I actually knocked it over, and you'll see all the flux starting to flow into the table. I've had a tremendous job trying to clean it up. It's not easy. But yeah, okay, we all make mistakes, and we can either laugh or cry about them. So guys, that's it. I will see you in the next video. I hope you've enjoyed this as much as I have. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, so we can share this 3D printing with the universe, and hopefully we'll get more people involved. Okay, take care, bye bye.